Hi, I'm John Rutan. Tonight, I'd like to talk a little bit about elections and what our founding fathers said about it. And to go through, we have to have a little bit of base knowledge on what we are. We are a republic, not a democracy. Um, when we say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, we say that to the republic for which it stands, not the democracy. So it's very important to understand the difference between democracy and republic. And you'll get a lot of representatives that'll tell you, oh, democracy and republic mean the same thing. And no, they do not. They are not even close to the same. Madison tells us in Federalist 10 the difference between democracies and republics. He also tells it to us in 39. He outlines why the word republic has been misused at that time for a lot of different types of government that were not republics, that were democracies. And so he was very adamant in describing the difference between having a democracy and a republic. Now, here's a few things he said about democracies. He said democracies have always been tumultuous in their life as they have been violent in their deaths. He said they've always been incompatible with liberty. Now, why is that? Well, in Federalist 10, he talked about the same thing when he talked about faction. He said faction is the enemy of all popular government. And he said there's two things that cause faction, and that is liberty and the unequal distribution of property. And he said, so you can't deal with faction by dealing with its causes. He said liberty is to faction what air is to fire. So he said it would be impracticable to get rid of air to get rid of the destructive nature of fire, just as it would be impracticable to get rid of liberty because of the destructive nature of faction. So you can't deal with that cause. Um, he said the unequal distribution of property was also another cause of faction. Well, your personality, your character, your wants, your wishes, your beliefs, those are all part of your property, right? Those are what make you who you are. That's individual. So to try to give everybody the same property would be impracticable as well. We should celebrate our differences, not argue over them. That's what makes us who we are. That's what makes our character, and that's property. And so he said you have to deal with its effects. You can't deal with its causes. Well, one of the causes of faction in a democracy actually breeds faction. Um, and in which what it does is democracy comes from two Greek words called demos kratos, which means rule of the many or mob rule. And so a lot of times people think America is a democratic republic, which is just makes me laugh every time I hear that. And I hear people say, "Well, we've got democratic processes, John. That's why we're a democratic republic." And no, that is not true. Voting isn't necessarily a democratic process because demos kratos, mob rule. Um, think of the riots that we've had recently. And I think everybody has seen them ad nauseum on the nightly news in the last 2 years. Do you think all those people sat around and voted on what they were going to do? Or did the mob come together and the majority ruled, and the majority went along and broke windows and looted and burnt and caused destruction and maimed people? Well, everybody that went along with the majority was in the majority. That was the vote. Right? They didn't set and take a vote. It's just the mob ruled by the majority doing what they were going to do, and those that were in the minority that opposed it got crushed. And that's the problem with democracies, right? They're horrible for minorities, whereas a republic actually protects minorities and still gives the majority the things that they want. And that's why Madison picked a republic for us. In fact, Benjamin Franklin, when he was leaving the State House, a woman walked up to him and she said, "So, Mr. Franklin, what have you given us?" And he said, "Madam, you have a republic if you can keep it. Our problem is we got lazy in the 20th century. We no longer wanted to study and be students of the Constitution, the principles of the founding. And so we let the progressive ideology push us to a democracy. The 17th Amendment was one of those things that pushed us to a democracy, and we'll cover that, why that put us into a form of democracy. Madison in Federalist 10 said that there's a tool that we can use to keep a healthy republic, and that's the tool of shame. And so that's why your congressional representative needs to be from your district. He needs to be someone that lives there. He needs to have longstanding roots there, family there. He needs to have that he's done business there. He goes to church there. He goes to the market there. You'll see him on the sidewalk. This is important because if you never see them, if you don't know who they are, you don't know who their family is, it's impossible to shame them when they have bad behavior. It's no different than training children. When children do bad, we shame them to change their behavior. And when they do good, we cheer them because we want to encourage that good behavior. We have to do the same thing with our representatives. Now, we are a representative republic. Madison puts it right in the Constitution in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1, that we are represented. See, in a democracy, everybody gets together and votes at one place, and then that's the will of the mass. But we're not a democracy; we're a republic, and with a republic, it has to be representative. So the people of that area pick a representative from that area, and that person goes somewhere to represent those people from that district. It's a pretty simple concept, actually. In fact, there isn't anybody in Lansing or Washington, D.C. that would debate us on representative that we are a government of representation. In fact, they run to be our representatives. So, in understanding that we have to be represented, and it has to be someone from our neighborhood or someone that we know, someone that we have ties to, so that we can use the tool of shame. Before the 17th Amendment, we picked our state our state legislature, our state representatives, by a popular vote from the people in our neighborhood, from the people from our district. The reason why we did that, for the same reason, for the tool of shame, so that we can keep a healthy republic. If they do good, we reinforce that behavior. If they do bad, we shame them. Now, this is a problem with carpetbaggers when people come into the area and they don't have any long-standing family roots or any business in the area or any family in the area, and they stay out of the area. You don't see them at church, and you don't see them on the sidewalk, and you don't see them in the market. It's hard to control their behavior, so they can do pretty much whatever they want to, and you have no control over that, only at the vote each time they come up for a vote, and that's not enough. It's we the people, and we the people are the true masters of the law, and we are the ones that are in control of the government. Those people we elect are our servants that are there to represent us and represent the constituency. So before the 17th Amendment, our senators were picked by the state legislature. Now, here's why it's important. My congressional representative should be from my area, and I should see them and know them, and I do. And my state representative should be from my area, and I should know them. For the most part, I think I do this one. Once past, I did. But my senator, since I've been alive and since I've been under the 17th Amendment, I've never seen one of my senators ever. So how do I shame them? I can't. Whereas before the 17th Amendment, when they were picked by the state legislature, I could shame my state representative when the senator was in bad behavior, and I could reinforce that good behavior with my state representative if the senator was doing good things. So that's why that's important. So the 17th Amendment shoved us into this direct democracy where we're not represented by districts through our state legislature and our representatives in the state legislature, it was done by a popular vote of everyone in the state. That's a democracy. That's where everybody comes together and the mass rules. And what did Madison say about democracy? That they've always been as tumultuous in their life as they have been violent in their deaths, and that they are always incompatible with liberty. So that was the first step into taking us from a republic into a democracy. Um, the Electoral College is the only thing that is preventing us from being a full-blown democracy. And we'll talk about that just a little bit. In keeping with the subject of faction, Madison said even the people themselves are subject to faction. And that's why he gave us the fifth article of the Constitution. That's why it's so arduous to change the Constitution, because he said even the people are subject to faction. So he put a natural check and balance into place there to prevent the people from their own best intentions, right? We all know that the road to hell is paved with the best of intentions. And so Madison put that safeguard there for us. But the other thing is, he said, if we do a popular vote of both our federal representative and our state representative and our state senator and the president of the United States, then what happens is we breed faction. Now we're too busy dealing with the causes, and Madison set up those safety nets to deal with the cause, or to deal with the effects of faction in our elections. And that is, we have the tool of shame for our congressional representative and for our state representative, and for our senator, because the senator was supposed to be picked by the state legislature. Now, Madison said when it came to the president, we had to be that should be picked from the same mode, but from the same pool of people, we the people, but by a different mode, so that we didn't breed faction in it. Now, one of the other reasons why they did it, and your schools and your universities are telling people that the Electoral College was there because our founding fathers didn't trust uneducated farmers, or that it was for white rich slave owners so that they could pick the president. And that's simply not true. None of that stands up to the truth of history or the Federalist Papers or any of the writings of our founding fathers. But the reason why they did set up the Electoral College is because of this. It was a natural check and balance. It was a natural law protection in the Constitution. Madison said that the Constitution itself is nothing more than a parchment barrier without these small natural law checks and balances in there. He talks about it in Federalist 51. He said we need to figure out a way to pit the ambition of the man against the ambition of the man. The way he looked at it is he thought that the three different branches of government would jealously guard their power from the other branches. In fact, he even thought that the representatives would jealously guard their representation of their districts among the other districts. That's partly how it was all set up. And in a true representative republic, that's the way it works. Since we've been pushed halfway into a democracy through the 20th century and the progressive ideology, people look at things a little bit different, and things have been trained a little bit different. And we've gotten away from the principles, and thereby we've lost our ability to keep our republic just out of ignorance and slothfulness. So let's look at that Electoral College and why it's set up that way. Our founding fathers knew, even at that day, that people cheat. And they knew people cheat at horse racing. They knew that people cheated at cards. They knew that people cheated at a lot of things, right? That's nothing new. Cheating's been happening since mankind. It's one of the inherent flaws of man. And our founding fathers understood that. And so the Electoral College was set up with inherent safeties. And here's why. First off, let's talk about the Electoral College and what it is. Some people may not understand the Electoral College and how it works. And that is, in your state, each congressional district gets one Electoral College vote, and each one of the two senators gets one Electoral College vote each. So if you live in a state with 14 congressional districts, you have 16 Electoral College votes. one for each one of the congressional districts and one for each one of the senators. If you live in a state that only has 5 congressional districts, then you have 7 electoral college votes set up the same way. And each congressional district is set up by they try to even it out by the same amount of people that representative is representing. So it doesn't matter if it's a representative from California or one from Michigan or one from Texas or one from Rhode Island. They're representing about the same amount of people. This is why we have the census every 10 years, so that we can make sure that our representation is by the same amount of people. Now that's important. It's important to understand, because when we vote for the office of president, we're not really voting for the president. Whatever congressional district you're in, you're voting for that electoral college vote. That's what you're actually voting for in a representative republic. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution says that the electors of the Electoral College are picked by the legislature thereof. Now, let's take that wording, and because words have meanings, and let's look at the meaning of that. The legislature thereof, that means the present setting legislature during the controversy, and every vote is a controversy. And so it was set up so that each legislature at the time of the vote is the ones that decided. Now in Michigan, our legislature tried to say, oh, well, the legislature in the past had made the decision that whoever gets the popular vote in the state gets all the electoral college votes. Well, that's a democracy. That's not a representative republic, even though both Republicans and Democrats in Lansing will both agree that we're a representative republic, that they are representatives and are supposed to represent their constituency. But did they? Did they in 2020? Have they in any election when they give all their electoral college votes because of a legislature at some other time decided it? Then they're not deciding the controversy at the time, are they? That would be like going to court and saying, well, you know what? We set a jury about a year ago, so we're going to take their determination on whether you're guilty or not guilty. And that's fair. No, that's not fair, because it's the controversy at the time, and it should be the jury at the time, or the representatives at the time, the legislature thereof. Now, when our legislatures decided to fall back on something that a legislature said, who knows how many years ago, and decide the electoral college vote, then what they've actually done is shirked at their responsibility. They didn't want to set in the controversy. Why? Because they want votes and money. And is that really the people that you want representing you? That, or they were ignorant, or cowards, one of the two. And is that really who you want representing you? Not me. I want somebody that understands the principles and understands that they're there to represent the constituents that they come from. And I want people that if they don't do that, that I can shame them at the market, I can shame them at church, I can shame them on the sidewalk if they don't represent the constituents that they come from. That's the way it's set up. So if you look at the map of Michigan, let's take the 2020 election, for example. If you look at the state of Michigan, you had huge areas in congressional districts of red and some blue here and there. Well, that means that congressional districts that were completely red didn't get represented. They voted, and somebody took their vote and gave it to somebody else because of some legislature years gone by. That's democracy. That's not a representative republic. And so as a representative republic, everything they do should be towards representation. So in Michigan, the way it should have run is your representatives that were the legislature thereof during the time of the controversy should have jealously fought for their constituents. And if their congressional district was completely blue, then the blue side should have got that one congressional district electoral college vote. But if that district was overwhelmingly red, that congressional district should have gotten that electoral college vote for the red. That's a representative republic. Now, why did our founding fathers set it up that way? Let's discuss that. The founders set it up that way because there's an inherent security in that. Here's why. They were worried of foreign intervention then in the election of the president. They were worried about cheating then in the election of the president. And by setting up this compound republic in which each of the small republics had to be represented, it gave an inherent security to any foreign intervention or to any ballot stuffing. And let's be honest. Any election that's stolen or any election that has fraud in it, it's done by good old-fashioned ballot stuffing. There's nothing new under the sun. That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what goes on. So, if that's the case, our founding fathers knew that if there was foreign intervention or cheating, it would only happen in a few small areas or in big city centers. That the rural areas, for the most part, it would be hard to have widespread fraud. So I will agree with some of the people that go, wow, there was no widespread fraud. No, there wasn't. But there was enough fraud in a few little places, and under the rules of democracy, that's all you need for all the electoral college votes to go that way. So you only need a little bit of fraud to do a lot of harm. Our founding fathers, the way they set it up, the electoral college vote, and by congressional districts having that electoral college vote, and representatives that are supposed to represent those areas within the state legislature to pick the electors of the electoral college vote. Pretty clear in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. Now, some people argue, well, the 10th Amendment, John, it says they can do that, they can set it up however they want to. Well, number one, yes, but it has to be the state legislature thereof, the one currently setting during the time of the vote, during the controversy. Number one, that didn't happen in Michigan. And number two, everything's supposed to be done under the umbrella of representative republic. That's what we are, not a democracy. When they picked the electors the way they did, they put us in, they did it by democracy, not by a republic. Now, you're going to have people talking about, well, there needs to be a national popular vote. Mike Shirkey pushed that. Obviously, he doesn't understand the principles of the Constitution and the principles that our founding fathers set up and the inherent securities that they put in the Constitution to protect us from that. If he understood that, then he would understand that the electoral college vote shouldn't be going by a popular vote of the state, but by the congressional districts. Because when you vote, you're not actually voting for president. You're voting for that electoral college vote in that congressional district where you are. And that's important. And it also, if there's any cheating, if there's any fraud, and you're going to get a little fraud in any federal election, you're going to get fraud in state elections. But by doing it, picking from the same pool, but by different modes, and doing it by representative government, it gives an inherent security against foreign intervention and against election fraud. So, be very cautious who you vote for. Make sure that they understand these simple principles that our founding fathers put out. Don't let them baffle you with politics. Make them represent you. And if they're not going to represent you, get rid of them. If you got a bad employee, you fire them. You don't promote them. You fire them. Because when you promote bad behavior, you just get more of the same. So use the tool of shame. Understand that we're a representative republic. We're not a democracy. Know that democracies are as tumultuous in their life as they are violent in their deaths. And know that with the 17th Amendment, we've already been pushed halfway into a democracy. I can't shame my senator, not when they're picked by a popular vote of the state. I could shame my senator through my state rep that's a legislator if we didn't have the 17th Amendment. But that ship sailed. But we've got another ship setting in port, and that's the national popular vote. You've got a petition going around right now where they're coaching it as let every vote count. Sounds very benign, but it's not. It's a way to shove us into a direct democracy completely. See, we got one foot over the fence with the 17th Amendment. The national popular vote will put both feet over the fence. And if you don't understand how tumultuous our government is right now, and what Madison said about democracies, there's tumultuous in their life, as they are what comes next, as they are violent in their deaths. So be very careful. This election in 2022 is going to be very important. Understand, become students of the Constitution and the principles. Read the Federalist Papers and understand them. Demand of your representatives that they represent you because we are a representative republic. Don't let them get by with practicing democracy with your liberty any longer. And so I hope this was informative. I hope you have a little bit better understanding of what's going on, and I hope it cuts through some of the BS that's coming out of Lansing and out of Washington, D.C. With that, have a good night.